And I use that to intake a lot of data from historical data or from fleets to say, how do I present this in better ways, better and better and more insightful ways, and how do I use this new tool to make things that I've never done before.
Welcome to another episode of The Way to Value, where we believe companies should be run by design and not left to chance. Today, I'm talking with my good friend, Parker Baxter of Greener Fleets, that is upsetting the transportation industry that we're going to get into with grant writing and make them more sustainable and profitable through a whole slew of techniques and tactics and tools that I'm excited to learn more about. So Parker, welcome and thanks for taking time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Appreciate it, man. It's super exciting to be here.
Yeah, let's start. Just tell us a little bit about yourself so people can get to know you a little bit.
For sure. So Parker Baxter, I'm kind of an engineer by trade. I was a Georgia Tech grad, moved to Greenville about 15 years ago. So it's been a great to see Greenville grow. Family guy. I have a wife, 2 kids. I've worked for a large corporation, Michelin, for 15 years while I've been here, and then recently ventured from entrepreneurship into entrepreneurship. So it's been quite the journey. That's happened in May. So excited to kind of dig in and talk about what we do. But most of my background is in design, engineering, manufacturing, consulting, and a lot with trucking fleets. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and we're going to focus a lot on that flip from intra to entrepreneurship with you today. And for those listening, Parker did take the Working Genius. He's an IE, so we're going to get into a little bit of that today. Can't say it was surprising with what you do for a living and what you did that you were the adaptable designer genius. So let's get started. You mentioned it. You were working for a global giant, Michelin, right? And now you're a small startup out there hustling and getting this business off the ground. What went into that decision? And was there a moment, did you have the aha moment? Marty always calls it his Jerry Maguire moment, where he picked up his goldfish and walked out. So walk us through maybe just what went into that decision and when was the moment you knew you had to go do this on your own?
Yeah, I mean, super interesting, right? So I kind of had 2 careers when I was working for Michelin. My first half of my career was really, truly design and designing tires and, typical Michelin things. And then I got really interested in the startup world within Greenville, helped to host some startup events about 8 or 9 years ago. Worked with a couple of people at USC Upstate to do a startup event up in Spartanburg. So really kind of got that entrepreneurial bug. And it aligned about the same time where Michelin was starting their innovation lab. And so I was one of the first people to join the innovation lab and help to start a business for a large corporation from scratch. Everything from design, manufacturing, operations, sales, marketing, did it all, which was really cool. Didn't feel like I had a job for about 7 years. And as the business grew, the challenges grew as well. And so I've always kind of realized I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to be my own business, and that gave me the experience to be able to feel comfortable taking the leap. And I think that was the most important thing for me is having the opportunity and having the skill set to be able to make that leap.
Yeah, and it's a scary. Obviously, I kind of made the same leap in December of last year, and it is one of the most exciting leaps, and also one of the most scary leaps I think I've ever made. Because let's face it, when you're working for big companies, a lot of safety, security, in the sense of, every 2 weeks you're getting a paycheck, you have health insurance, you have all this stuff. And when you go to make that leap, all of a sudden the spigot is just cut off, right? Yeah. And it's like, wait, it's been 2 weeks and no money hit my bank account. So maybe how do you walk through that scariness and that did you have the confidence that you knew right away this was going to work? Did you have like a proof of concept that, hey, I already know I've got stuff lined up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what's super interesting, coming from the innovation lab there was some process in place of how to create, how to valorize these ideas, which really built confidence in me to be able to say, man, I've done this, I wouldn't say on my own, I've done this in a large corporation, something new, and really drove innovation for many years. And I have a process to go through, right? I have a way to lead my thoughts, lead the business plans, and it was set up in such a way that I had some comfortability in some clients that were there ready to say yes as soon as you leave. That was a big deal, right? Having it set up not only from a skill set but from a financial standpoint is to say day one, how do we get this business up and running? Having that client base, having that offer ready to go was super important.
Shameless plug. So you would say you did it by design. You didn't leave
There
it
you
to
go.
chance. So I think that's great that you had a process. You had some clients there. So let's get into greener fleets a little bit, which is your startup and what you're doing now. And it's fascinating to me, and I don't know how you do it all, but we're going to find out today. Tell us a little bit about greener fleets, like what you focus on, what's your why behind the greener fleets, and maybe where you're hoping to take this.
For sure. Greener Fleets really started with some deep experience in how large and medium-sized fleets, when I talk about fleets, I mean, think semi-trucks, everything from semi-trucks to waste fleets to even some of the Amazon delivery vehicles, right? So having some deep expertise in how those fleets operate and what their pain points are is something that's where kind of the precipice where Greener Fleets started. But at Greener Fleets, we really, the vision is to help them become more sustainable. And we do that by helping connect with private and public funding in order to fill the gap on what it takes to be more fuel efficient and more sustainable. Some of the ways we do that is with grant writing. We do fleet assessments to really lay out these roadmaps for fleets on what technologies can they begin to adapt, what technologies and infrastructure do they need to implement. Think electric vehicles or hydrogen or CNG and RNG, natural gas, for instance. Help them identify what technologies are right for their fleet, and we use a data-driven approach to do so. Grants are one of the things that are the output, right? Helps them fill that gap in funding. These new technologies are expensive, but also we really started to explore, what does private funding look like? Is there a need for fleets to get investments for buying EVs? Right, and some fleets we're seeing that nowadays. Yeah. So super interesting there.
So why is sustainability important? It's about, you hear sustainability, it's almost become like AI. It's just this buzzword that can mean a gazillion things to a gazillion different people. But why is sustainability important to the companies you work with and to fleets in general?
Yeah, I mean, fleets exist. To be clear, fleets exist because they're shippers, meaning people who make goods that need to go somewhere. So that's why fleets exist. And sustainability means a couple things. It means, is the fleet around in a year from now, right? Are they financially sound to be around a year from now? As well as, the big shippers want to reduce their emissions, want to really try to cut their impact to the world. And the fleets are a big part of that. And so fleets do it because they want to win that business. They usually don't do it just from the kindness of their heart. They're trying to win business. And sustainability in most cases actually means you're saving cost, right? Especially in the long run. I think fuel is one of the biggest expenses for these fleets. It's the number one expense behind buying trucks and behind hiring drivers. So if you can save 20% on fuel, it's a multi-million dollars of savings for the fleet, which makes them more profitable.
Definitely. And so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but as greener fleets, sustainability, helping the environment, all this good stuff, how do you balance sustainability with profitability? Because I would imagine that's a little bit of a struggle trying to accomplish both.
For sure. I mean, you think about how much more expensive some of these new technologies are. Electric vehicles, for instance, are quite expensive on the upfront cost. And a good example of what we do for fleets is there's some programs in California where we've helped fleets get almost $200,000 back to buy EVs, which really bridges that gap and creates a total cost of ownership that is much more in line with their traditional business models. You want to look at CNG and RNG, which is renewable natural gas. There's actually some value there that fleets can recognize beyond just the operations. There's tax credits, there's incentives, there's things that fleets can do to really fill that gap on profitability. And a lot of fleets we work with actually see a long-term benefit, and that's critical, right? They're not going to do this, as I mentioned before, just because.
You mean big corporations don't do stuff just out of the goodness of their heart?
Yeah. So that's the profitability is super crucial. Trucking fleets today are running on razor thin margins. There's been freight recessions. Some of the biggest fleets you see just taking a hammering over the last several years. And after COVID, prices skyrocketed for everything. So I think we're really hitting it at a prime point in time where the fleets who want to be more sustainable and can afford to be are really going to be able to drive value long term. And this is a good time to make that leap.
Nice. So again, you jumped from Michelin into this founder's role. What are maybe some lessons you've taken from Michelin, and maybe what are some things that you had to forget because you're not a multi-billion global company with all the resources that you could imagine?
Yeah, there's a lot. I'd say some of the biggest lessons I've taken with me are trying to have some structure in how you attack your customers. And what I mean by attack the customers is how do you really pick the right customers. I think that's super important when you're a small business. The shiny objects are everywhere, and knowing which customer is the right fit for your business at this point in time. I think I really took that with me. The other thing I would say is, you look at some big conglomerates and you have legal and marketing and sales, and now that's all you. And so how do you run the business and maintain the funnel, all right? How do you fill the funnel and do the operations at the same time is something that I've really struggled with, frankly. But I've been starting to put more processes in place and automating some of those processes. So that's been I think the key struggle is, putting an NDA or a contract in place. It's a lot more effort than just handing it off to your legal team, right?
And with you're a T frustration, which
Yes.
I am. So the paperwork piece is not the funnest part of our day or what we enjoy doing the most. So you mentioned shiny objects and not chasing shiny objects. And I want to dig into that a little bit because in our experience with clients I'm working with, this is a huge challenge, right? They want to grow revenue. They want to be more profitable. And sometimes they start chasing nickels and they're missing dollars.
Yeah.
And so how do you stay laser focused maybe on your ideal customer, and how do you maybe determine, hey, sorry, I'm just not the right fit for you, and call this other company or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, man, that's a challenge because as a single person business, right? You want that money to come in. But really aligning your customers and the work you're working on with the mission and the values of the business. That's right. So our vision at Greener Fleets is to help fleets become more sustainable, and we do that through fleet assessments and road mapping. If we're not aligning to that, if I'm not aligning to that with my customers, and they just want to apply for a grant and be done, that's not really a great fit, right? We want to become your partner and helping you know why you're using that grant. What's the strategy behind it? What are you going to do after you get the grant, right? And so those are the things that I feel that are super important in picking the right customer. Obviously, the customers you do pick, you want partners, and sometimes working with the larger, bigger companies is great from a resume standpoint, but they're also going to they kind of want to string you along sometimes, right?
Yep.
Put you on net 120-day payments, and that's really challenging as a business. And so trying to figure out how do you pick the right size and the right kind of customer.
Nice. So as a founder, you mentioned you're wearing a bunch of different hats. You're wearing all of the hats, every single hat that's possible to wear. Has there been one that's been surprisingly enjoyable, and has there been one that's maybe been surprisingly not so enjoyable?
I've really always wanted to be more into sales. I've never been a direct sales guy in my entire career, and I just love talking to the customers, right? I have a goal once a day. I talk to a customer, and I love that. That's something that has been really fulfilling to me, is to be so close to the front line. And I did that some when I was at part of a corporation, but being on my own, being able to reach out and force myself to reach out has been really fulfilling. You mentioned being a T, not strong in the T, right? So finishing that last 10%, having to really dig in and get across the finish line on some of those tedious tasks are really struggling with. And so I think that's where I try to find some partners potentially to to go and help fulfill those, or some contractors that can help fulfill those things.
Yeah, going back to your jump from the global corporation to solopreneurship, do you think that was more about chasing opportunity or escaping the corporate constraints, where it's all, a lot of resources, but also a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of that kind of stuff. Looking back on it, do you think it was one of those two things or something completely different?
I think as being an entrepreneur, I think it's all about the opportunity. And so for me, I think it's was an opportunity that aligned really well with my personal values, right? So wanting to be my own business person, wanting to really help become more sustainable as a person, as an organization, having the ability to take that leap in a way that made sense, that aligned with both my corporation, Michelin, and what I wanted to do. I think it all had to align. I think it really was an opportunity that lined up. And then I think the skills that I acquired over those 15 years in corporate world really just helped to accelerate it. Right.
Yeah.
So it gave me that confidence to take the jump.
Yep. And I think mine, if I reflect back on my journey, mine was almost more escaping the constraints, right? Like I knew I wanted to do stuff. I knew I wanted to partner with clients and help them grow and succeed, but I didn't want to do it in the box that some corporations put you in. So when Marty and I discussed starting this, like I was passionate about, man, I can create my own processes. I can create our own way of doing business, and we can really, I don't have to run it through legal, or hell no, we don't do that, or that's not what we do, or that's not business we want. So mine, I think, was more escaping the constraints and being able to just be free.
Yeah. No, having some of the constraints lifted is super, super freeing, right? It is very nice, setting up a payment structure, right? That was one of the big challenges you had at the organization, where you wanted to get paid, and it was difficult because you had to go through all the layers and get things set up. Now, if you want to strike a deal with a vendor, you sign it in the same day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's super freeing, and that allows you to move, very quickly, which is something that's important as you're a solopreneur.
Yeah.
Is to move quickly.
So you're wearing all the hats. You're also a father. You're also a husband. You probably have hobbies outside. I know you work out and go to the gym and stuff like that. What processes, tools, apps do you use that help you stay focused and help you stay disciplined enough to achieve all of these things?
I think my best app is my wife. She's awesome. She helps keep the family, the house squared away. She's super supportive. Imagine having two young kids, 2 and 4. And taking this leap, it takes some support there, and so I think that's really super critical, is having somebody to support you, believe in you is probably another way. When you're on your own, you can't really go ask everyone, all right? And so the wife sometimes becomes the sounding board quite a bit. So she's probably the best app that I could imagine. But no, as far as other things, I really try to stick to a structured schedule. I mentioned customer calls once a day, and I think that's super critical, not losing sight of that. My Mondays are usually, I send out the marketing emails and do some campaigns and push on that. And then Fridays, I try to do that tea and try to close things out for the week, right? And so I try to stay on that weekly schedule. The whole 90 days, I've really been thinking heavily about how do I get into a kind of a 90-day rhythm with my business, on a quarterly. That's something I'm struggling with still, but I think I'm open to suggestions. If you know any good apps, please let me know.
Another shameless plug. We can help you with that.
Yeah,
we're big believers here. You've probably heard it through some of our videos. Is relentless execution, and we think it is a 90-day window. You pick your one. As a solopreneur, I would not pick more than 1 or 2, right? Because if you do, you're just going to get overwhelmed and not be able to do any of it. Most of our clients, we do not let them pick more than 3, right? Depending on the size, if they can handle 3, we'll let them go up to 3. But it's 1 or 2. It's 90 days, and it's relentless pursuit of getting that thing done. And at the end of 90 days, you just ask yourself, is it done? And you get to say yes or no. And there's times it's no, and there's reasons, and you think about it. But we're big believers in 90 days. It's long enough to get stuff done, but it's not short enough to where you can't get anything done. So we can definitely help you if you need that. And great answer on the wife, by the way. That was a good one. As you grow and as you scale, everyone wants to increase revenue, everybody wants to increase profits, but are you focused, and if so, maybe where are you focused on driving like value into your organization? Where do you see opportunities to drive value into greener fleets?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole data integration, right? There's consulting as a person and experience, but I think the ability to leverage data is something that I've really uh, been growing and building in in my business, my processes. We have a lot of really good information and data already, and how do we continue to scale that in such a way where we can help solve more and more complex problems? The tools are out there. You see a lot of AI integrations that help with fleets, that help with management of the fleet, with cost. I think carving out a niche there is going to be super interesting. And it's not just for the fleets. I really see greener fleets being the polar star of, hey, I'm a greener fleet certified fleet. I am the cream of the crop. I'm the best. And that way the fleets know that, the shippers know that, the technology providers know that. And that's where I really want to be. I want to use data to help fleets differentiate themselves, right? Especially from a sustainability standpoint.
Yeah. What is a business tool that you couldn't do without right now? You mentioned AI. Obviously that's a buzzword that it can mean a gazillion things to a gazillion different people. But what is maybe a tool that you think, I could not do this job without this business tool?
Yeah. No, I think I use ChatGPT, but I use it in a way where I do a lot of. I'm not a coder. Never have I ever coded. But with ChatGPT, I do. And so I make some really quick prototypes and some ways to test out these business plans. And I use that to intake a lot of data from historical data or from fleets to say, how do I present this in better ways, better and better and more insightful ways, and how do I use this new tool to make things that I've never done before, right? So I've just recently made a tool in a day. It took me about 3 hours to do a diesel tax credit calculator, right? And did I know much about that 6 weeks ago? No, but I looked into it, and now I can make a tool that's useful, very useful, in a day. That just blows my mind how
that's
fast
to
you
me
can
is the
move.
genius of ChatGPT. It's not necessarily create this, right? Starting from scratch, I think it still struggles.
Yeah.
But it is very good at taking a large set of data and, like you said, kicking out some insights that you can use. That's kind of how I use it. When you have these large organizations, we can input a bunch of personality assessments and disc profiles. And, if you have 100, 200, 300 people, it's hard for a person to kind of connect all the dots and see all the data. But you can load that in to ChatGPT and it'll kind of spit out, hey, this team's heavy here and light here, and they'd be really good at this and not so good at this. And you can really customize it down to what you're trying to
for
do.
sure. And just in my dailies, right? I use so much AI to write draft emails and polish them. I'll write the 80% and let it polish it out.
You let it tee for you.
Yeah, I do. I let it finish it up. That's exactly right. And that's super. That's been like my accelerator is I can go write a really rough email in my own way, my own voice, and then say, hey, make this a little bit more professional, or hey, this needs to be a little more personal.
Marty taught me a term as he was writing his book. It's called the word vomit draft. So that's like, you go into chat, you just word vomit everything, and then say, all right, let's clean this up a little bit and make it more professional, more relatable. But it's still your words and your voice, which I think you can easily spot now on LinkedIn and anywhere where it's just somebody went in and said, create me a post.
Make a LinkedIn post for this. Yeah.
It's like you didn't even try, did you?
Yeah.
So going again from the corporate world to what you're doing now, what's maybe something you've learned about yourself along the way that maybe you didn't know if you would have stayed at Michelin forever?
Yeah. Well, I'd say the highs are higher, the lows are lower. I've learned that very quickly, and I think that builds a lot of resilience, and I think that's really been shown up for me, right? I think really seeing that resilience in myself and being proud of that. That's something I don't think you get when you don't have that risk reward balance that you have in entrepreneurship. And so I always felt I was a pretty resilient person, but when you have a big customer that you think is going to be your next 6 months worth of eating, and then it gets pulled on the last minute, that takes a lot of resilience to get out of that hole and want to go find the next one, right? Want to go do another one. So I think the resilience for me has been super important.
And as an E, because I'm an E as well, that hurts because you're like, why don't you like me? Why don't you want to
Yeah.
do business with me?
I thought we were having a good
friends.
conversation. Yeah.
And so I think it hurts us E's even more. So Marty's a G. G's, I don't feel like take it as personal. They're fine. They got their reaction, right? It's a no, fine, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Us E's kind of, it hurts a little more, I think. We take it a little more personal, which we shouldn't. There's a gazillion reasons why they might go in a different direction or a different vendor, but it's still, at least in my opinion, my E kind of takes a hit and it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, you got to learn to brush yourself off and not take it so personal. It's hard to do that a lot of times, but that's why I think having that support group and really why I chose to work at a co-working space is so when you have those wins, you can hit the fake gong. When you have those hard times, you can at least go to the person that you don't know and say, "Let me tell you about something real quick." You know?
Yeah. So being a founder, this is an interesting topic. I have Marty and I have Tom. So if I have questions, I can call them. If I need advice, I can call them. I have, kind of a mini community. I know sometimes as a solopreneur, it can be very lonely. And it's not just solopreneurs, single founders running big companies by themselves can be a very lonely spot just for that. You can't really, I don't know, maybe Jamie is a brilliant aerodynamic, whatever, and can talk about rolling tires and all that other stuff. But a lot of times it's a very lonely place where you don't have somebody that you can. So how do you maybe supplement yourself when it comes to, hey, I need somebody's advice. I want to run this by somebody. I need a extra set of eyes on something. Like how do you handle that piece and avoid being the lonely founder?
I've been trying to reach out to some old connections. I just recently reached out to my college roommate who happened to start his own consultancy firm on the same day I did.
Oh, that's awesome.
We hadn't talked probably in 8 years, and so just got a chance to reconnect and have someone who's relating and going through that same situation. I put myself out there a lot more as well, asking for some mentorship, especially in the industry. There's a lot of people that have been in the trucking world for 40 plus years, and that's their life. And so really reaching out for some mentorship. And I found some, I've started to kind of get some traction there. I'd say my struggle is being a good mentee, really sharing those challenges, being open up enough to be like, hey, this is what I'm really struggling with. That's not my typical personality. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm having to learn how do you open up more and really talk about your struggles and, hey, you don't know everything. I don't know how to price in certain situations. I don't know it all, and being able to get some good mentorship, I think, is super important.
And that's a big thing, I think, for any leader is knowing when to be vulnerable. Like, it's okay to say, I don't know this, right? But let me go find it. Let me call some folks. But it is hard to say, well, you're running your own business. What do you mean you don't know how to price this? We're like, oh, because I've never had to price it before and calling around. So there might be people out there listening, Parker, that are working for a corporate giant right now, but have kind of the thoughts of maybe making the jump someday. What advice would you maybe give them, or what would you tell them? How do they know? How would they know when they're ready?
I don't think. I thought I was gonna feel a lot more ready than I was at any point in time. So I don't necessarily know if it's like I'm ready. I think it's about what you talked about earlier, the opportunity, right? And I think putting yourself in a situation where you have the experience to be able to at least act on the opportunity. You may not be ready for it, but at least putting yourself in position to go, I could probably figure this out, and I'm willing to take the risk because there's an opportunity. And I'd say a lot of that has to do early on, make sure you have something that people actually like and are willing to pay for. That's something that we really focused on heavily in the innovation lab at Michelin is, I love the idea, but who's going to give you money for this?
Yep.
Because that's how you start a business, right? And so having the opportunity and knowing somebody's actually willing to eat the dog food or pay for the thing you want to do, that's critical. A lot of people live in their own minds and think this is the best thing that I can do. This is a great idea. I know people are going to want it, but they haven't talked to anybody about it. So answer's not in the room. Go talk to as many potential customers, and try to get somebody to say yes.
Yep. Yeah. The only thing I think I would add, just from my experience, is make sure you're ready financially. Make sure you're ready personally. I'm sure you had a conversation with your wife before just coming home one day and saying, guess what, honey, I quit my job and we're doing this. So it's almost have your 90-day plan, but have the next 90 days kind of, hey, this 90 day I want to accomplish, get my first customer, whatever, and then build it from there. So I think just having a plan, a process, you talk a lot about processes earlier. Make sure you have a process and a plan of, okay, this is how I'm going to pay my bills, right? We know it's going to cost this much. We can, get all that stuff ready to go while you're still getting that paycheck every 2 weeks. But then once you're never going to be ready. Like there's never it's always like, I've been in HR a long time. People say, well, it's not a good time to fire somebody. There's a holiday. There's never a good time to fire anyone. There's also never a perfect time to just jump out on your own. I don't think. I think you just got to do it. But you got to think through it. Make sure you have that plan of, okay, I can at least survive a year.
That was super. You hit it on the head, though. That was super important for me, is financially making sure that, what does this look like for my family, right? And why am I doing this? Is it for the money? No. For me, it was more about what we talked earlier, the freedom to be able to say, I want to be able to make decisions more quickly, have that freedom. And you know what? If I want to go work in Hilton Head Island 1 week and while my family's on vacation with me, we can do that, right? That freedom is super interesting. But being ready financially to be able to do that is that's a great point, Dale. You got to have that,
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, maybe what's next for Greener Fleets? What does the next 2-ish years look like?
Yeah, so, super excited. I'm kind of going on a road show with some trade shows here. We'll be talking, I'll be presenting at a few trade shows around how fleets can maximize their savings with current funding. So really the next 3 to 4 months hitting in the marketing and road shows hard. And then looking to try to launch some type of SaaS application in the next year and a half or so. That's going to take a big push, and really want to get to the point where I can feel comfortable doing that from a financial standpoint and having the business bootstrap it. I'd rather bootstrap it than have to have an investor.
Oh, you just made Marty perk up. He loves that. He loves that. Just sell more. He's always like, everything can be solved by selling more. Yeah. So if there's a fleet manager out there or a owner of a fleet company, how do they get in touch with you? How do they engage Greener Fleets?
Yeah, Greener Fleets, I'd say one of the best ways. We do a lot of posts on LinkedIn. Follow Greener Fleets on LinkedIn. I try to share as much news as possible and really engage with the community there. That's a really good first point. You can reach out to greenerfleets@scalardesign.com. We're really looking to grow the customer base that we have, beyond Canada and more into the U.S. And so really looking at some U.S. customers to continue to grow.
Awesome. Well, Parker, thank you so much. Again, with everything going on, I know your time is very valuable. Appreciate you carving some out for us. Very interesting insights on your journey from corporate giant to founder of Greener Fleets. Awesome stuff.
Thanks,
I know you're going to succeed and do awesome. And for anybody out there, get in touch with Parker if he can help. And if By Design can help, give us a call as well. Until next time, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.